Hello, folks. Welcome to Sunrise Conversations Podcast. This is Ken Bonner, your bishop. Yes, Mr. Langley, casual words, all the way from the Virgin Islands. He's a man on the move. He's here to share his new book with us, folks. Yeah, so without further ado, we're going to bring him in here. Hello, my brother. How you doing?
My brother, I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me back. It's wonderful to be back and having another Sunrise Conversation.
Man, it's good to have you back on here, man. You're definitely a man on the move. Making the
it can't be still, man. It can't be still. We have to do our best. And as you've heard me say, if you have the capability and the availability, then you have a responsibility to give back. You have a responsibility to help. You have a responsibility to do what you can to make an impact and a difference.
Yes, sir. No doubt about it. Listen, we want to know about your book, Baby Daddy, Changing the Narrative. Can you tell us about the book and what inspired you to write it, please?
Absolutely. So the book is an introspective and retrospective look at fatherhood. It stems from my own personal experience, both my successes and failures, as well as accounts with some other young men who are in my circle and just men I had met in passing, whether I've been mentoring with them or just assisting them in some capacity, understanding the trials that they went through, trying to become a better father and a better role model. And it doesn't just stop at the biological fatherhood. We talk about step parents. We're talking about mentors, big brothers, teachers, whatever capacity that you're in, that you have an influence on young people. This book is about how we become the absolute best we can so that we can give them a bright future.
Yes. What message do you hope your readers will take away from the book?
That you have the ability and that you have a choice. No matter what's going on, no matter what your situation is, we talk a lot about the courts. We talk about dealing with individuals and the other parenting party maybe being difficult to deal with, but at the end of it all, you have a choice and you can still choose to create a relationship with our young people, with your children, with other people's children. Again, whatever dynamic that is, whatever capacity that you find yourself in, you still have a choice of how that relationship goes. And that's the message I want to take away, that for anyone who reads the book. And this is not just for men, even though it's catered to men. I think women can get an idea because we address moderately some of the things that we deal with from the male perspective and dealing with women who are perhaps bitter and not wanting to allow the man to be part of the child's life for whatever reason. And how do you as a man deal with that, right? And I don't mean as a man in a chauvinistic or macho kind of way, but as the male figure, the other half of parenting model, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the difficulties of trying to spend time with your children, right? So we talk a lot about a lot of different dynamics that play a role and play a part in the successes and the failures of fatherhood.
Lots of times when I hear young people say, that's my baby's mama, or that's my baby's daddy, in a sense that sounds so emotional from one another. Mm-hmm. So how does your book change that particular narrative concerning the concept of baby's mama or baby's daddy?
Oh, man, that's a great question, because that's really at the foundation of the book. If we talk about changing the narrative, what we're talking about is changing the connotation around that phrase. As in some other interviews, I talked about the fact that I wish we would just get rid of it altogether, remove it from our vernacular, because it is condescending and I think it is detached, and I think it does lend itself to a level of disrespect to the other parent. Now, I know some people are going to argue and say, well, if the person's not living up to that standard, whatever that standard may be, then they can be relegated to this moniker. And I think that that's still an injustice, because you chose that person for whatever reason, and you have to give that person an opportunity. Now, I want to stop right there and say that I do recognize that both men and women shirk that responsibility and do not want to be parents. Now, this is not for them, so I want to make that very clear. But the people who are trying, this book is a testament of the work that you sometimes have to do, the work that is difficult, but it's work that can be done to build positive relationships. So again, if you are not interested, and I say this in the book, if you're not interested in being a parent, then this is not for you, because you've already given up on the opportunity for your child to have a brighter future with you in it. But for the people who are trying and people who are making an attempt on both sides of the fence, this is a book where we really start to uncover and unravel some of the things that we don't want to talk about, especially from the male perspective. We don't want to talk about the fact that if you and your significant other are no longer together, another man steps in to assist, in raising your children, don't make it more complicated. Don't make it more difficult. You all had your time for whatever reason. It didn't work out. So let's all work together for the betterment of the children. And we often forget that because we get so wrapped up in it's about me or it's about her, it's about him, it's about my happiness and my joy. Guess what? You got to make some serious compromises when you bring kids into the equation. When you bring kids into this planet, it's no longer about just you. And we have too many parents that think it's still just about them when there are children involved. And we've got to get out of that mindset as well. You've got to figure out a way to work together. You've got to figure out a way to co-parent. You've got to figure out a way to put all of you all, however many there are, as adults, in the best position to work together for the betterment of the children that are involved.
In what ways does your book address stereotype when it comes to mama, baby's daddy, that young people tend to have amongst themselves?
I don't dive too far into the stereotype, but we do talk a little bit about the fact that, there are men who are constantly procreating. And again, that's a choice. If you know this person has 5 or 6 kids with 5 or 6 other women, why would you put yourself in that position? Likewise, if you are with someone who barely raises the kids that she has or pawns them off because she's missing out on life or whatever, again, why would you continue to create more children? So you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. And we look at that because not enough of us are thinking past just the pleasure portion of it. And so when you talk about the stereotype, the only way you break a stereotype is to first acknowledge its existence, but then make a choice on how you want to address it. Awareness is only half the equation. Then it requires action. So whether you are a baby mama, quote unquote, or a baby daddy, quote unquote, you both have the ability to redirect that energy and to no longer be considered that by your actions, your choices, and your conduct.
So it seems to place an emphasis on the fact, regardless of the circumstances brought the two people together, once that child becomes in that quotation, there is a major responsibility that both parties should step up.
Absolutely. And there are some things that are going to make situations different and difficult, and I acknowledge that. Sometimes you may have to completely step away and reevaluate some things and fix yourself. There's lots of small nuances to the parenting arena. But at the end of the day, you figure out a way. If you're willing, I always want to put that out there because there are a lot of people who aren't willing. If you're willing, you've got to figure it out. And if you're unwilling, then, I say this in the book very plainly. If you are unwilling and you don't have an interest in being part of your kid's life, then the best thing you can do for them is to disappear. Because being flippant and being negligent and being inconsistent is worse than being absent.
What was the most challenging aspect of writing this book, and how did you overcome it?
The introspection portion. I never want to write anything from the position of having all the answers or I'm in my ivory tower telling someone how to live. I always want to write from a place of personal experience. And so what was really hard was having to take a look back at my life and realize and talk about a lot of the places where I just drop all significantly in being part of my children's lives and being there for them and being present when I had them. And I talked about being more interested in partying, and I talked about being more interested in being out and reveling. I talked about being more interested in girls and, all these different things that for a time took precedent. And, and then even when that changed, I also talked about the fact that when I made the shift, start working hard, I swung the pendulum to the complete other end of the spectrum where, and I tell you this in the book, I worked so hard and in the effort to teach my children the importance of hard work, I forgot to have them around to see it. I was always gone. Right? So you have to have a balance. And that was really hard for me to have to go back and not only relive, but really accept and realize, okay, let me make sure that I am not still making those same mistakes.
So what has been the general response to your book?
A lot of people have said that it's something that's been sorely missed and from the conversation and something that is refreshing, and people are very excited to continue to learn more about just the dynamic of parenting. I've had people already ask me to write a book about the other side of that coin, specifically about a lot of ways that certain women treat men and treat the parenting responsibility and some different things. But, right now I really want to focus on how we as men become better. But generally, I I've been very pleased at the response. I think one of the things that I was the most concerned about in bringing this book to the forefront was the potential for it to be weaponized and for, certain parties to take this book and try to utilize it for leverage against the male role. And that's the last thing that I want. We try to have these conversations because we want to recognize that there is work that needs to be done on our behalf, and we want to continue to do that good work so that we can all benefit from growth and the transformation.
With truth comes responsibility, and a lot of people are not willing to accept responsibility fronted with truth. So any resistance to it or anyone trying to shape it other than what it's meant to be, obviously, something's missing there,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you bring up a great point. That aversion to truth is really something that is foundational to an aversion to change.
That's part of the I guess you could call it an issue or a problem for a long time, is that we want to hear the things that we want to hear and sometimes not face the things that we need to hear in order to help us be that better version of ourselves, So.
Absolutely. I mean, tough conversations are not called tough conversations because they're delightful. It's because it's stuff that we don't want to talk about.
Exactly. How do you envision continuing to advocate for changing narratives and promoting positive representations through your work?
So working hands-on with young men, working on some programs and some initiatives here in the territory that will push the fatherhood and the importance of the fatherhood role, as well as continuing to be an example as much as I can when seen out, when seen socially, when seen with children, and continuing to put myself in position to assist young people. Because again, it's not just about being the biological parent, but at any moment and at every opportunity, you can assist in creating a positive impact on a young person's life.
One thing in my own experience I have found is that a lot of young people are receptive to positive guidance just on the strength of somebody taking an interest in their future, their welfare. I find that to be true with a lot of young people you work with today.
Absolutely. At the moment you show an interest, and the moment you show a genuine curiosity about them and about what they're trying to do, you see an instant change in their behavior and their attitude. And that's almost a 100% true.
What advice would you give to aspiring authors who want to address important social issues through their writing also?
The first one would be to write, get those thoughts out. And the second one would obviously be to be unafraid, because these, like any tough topic or any tough conversation, they're things that we don't want to talk about. But if we expect a change, if we expect things to get better, then we first have to address it. So if you are an aspiring writer and there's something that's burning a conviction that you have, then go ahead and write it. And let's start having the conversations, because that's the only way that we're going to serious about being and making the adjustments and the changes that we want to see.
You also got another book out. Am I correct?
Actually, this Baby Daddy's my 7th book.
How do you find time?
I did have quite a bit more of it when I was writing earlier on, but now it's just making the time. One of the things that we have to do as creatives, in particular, is you just have to figure out where the shift must happen. We all have things that we do that we consider part of our routine that aren't actually necessary. So if you want to write, then you need to stop doing something and make that time to write. If you need to be putting together your material for your podcast, then you need to be making sure that you put that time in your calendar, whatever tool that you use to keep yourself on track. Make sure that you are putting in the creative slots that you need, because it's easy to say that you're too busy. But the reality is you're only too busy because you've not committed yourself to pursuing your creative ventures.
One thing I would really, amongst many things, would like for you to speak on is that a lot of people don't seem to understand that the thoughts that they continuously hold in their mind on a day-to-day basis impacts their life in the direction in which they are thinking. Could you speak on that?
Absolutely. The Bible says that out of the mouth, the heart speaks. But before it gets to the heart, it's first a thought. What ends up happening is that the more you think a thing, the more you believe that thing, the more you project it into reality. And when we talk about life and death being in the power of the tongue, what we are literally talking about is the fact that you can create the life that you want by speaking it into existence. The term abracadabra is actually from, I don't want to tell you the wrong language. I think it's Arabic, and it's abracadabra, which actually means I will create what I speak. So when people are talking about a life, or they're talking about a goal, or they're talking about their current place, what they're doing is reinforcing a belief. And in that belief, you end up reinforcing the behavior. And in that behavior, we reinforce the lifestyle. So whatever it is that you're doing, everything is lining up to keep you in a place or to propel you to the next place. Yes. So you have to first change how you think. That's why I say all the time, you have to change the way that you think before you can change the way that you live. Because the only way you're going to change the way that you live is to change the way that you think and perceive your situation.
You're surprised the number of people just don't seem to embrace that concept. I mean, it seems like we are conditioned to pull out the negatives. I don't have this. I wish I had this. Only if this would happen. Blah, blah, blah. And it seems that I don't know if it's real difficult or we make it real difficult to focus on positive. I think it's social conditioning.
It's fascinating because the negative aspect of anyone's life often only makes up 1% of what's actually happening. And we overwrite the 99% of all things that are good and great and wonderful to focus on that 1% of things that aren't going right. And I think you're right. I believe it's social conditioning because we are conditioned to believe that only the haves have privilege. Only the haves can do things. Only the haves can walk through doors. And so if you're a have-not, then the only thing you can focus on is what you don't have because of the way that our society is constructed. But realize that it doesn't matter what you have or don't have. What matters is how you care for what exists in either set of circumstances. You see, people who have not, they just don't have against somebody else who does, if that makes sense. So, right, the people who are focused on things they don't have is only in comparison to something that someone else does. But if you look at what you do possess, the only way to get to perhaps attaining what you don't possess is to nurture what you already have. You see, God is waiting for many people to simply show that they can manage where they are currently. Once we can prove that to whom much is given, much is required. So no matter what it is, and the much, we get focused on the much because we want it to be magnificent and grand and full of grandeur, right? However, your much is simply whatever it is you have. And so to whatever it is that you've been given, what's required is for you to nurture it. What's required is for you to cultivate it. What's required is for you to love and care for it, whatever that thing is. When you can do that, that's when you can be trusted with whatever's coming next. But many of us are so downtrodden with where we are that we cannot see that what's coming is obviously going to be better than what was. But until you can start focusing on what's coming, you're always going to be stuck in what you don't have.
We should do more to raise these kids to believe that they can reach greater heights and greater potential by setting goals and focusing on their educational development, personal development, and so forth, rather than sitting back saying, because certain things are happening in the world, I'm not going to allow to be successful. It happens a lot.
A lot. And the difference between understanding your reality and being a victim is in your action. Mobilization means that no matter what's happening, you're going to continue to push forward. You're going to continue to work toward whatever that goal is, in spite of whatever the opposition is. The victimization mindset is debilitating. It says that because these things are happening, I am never going to be able to be whatever I aspire to be. And this is the thing that people forget when you look at the comparison of guilt and conviction. You see, guilt makes you look back. Guilt makes you think back on all the things that you didn't do or the things that you should have done. But conviction is the realization that you have an opportunity to make it better and to do something different and to do something unique. And so the same thing holds true when you talk about reality versus a victim mindset. The victim mindset is the guilt that, because my life is terrible and the world is against me, I'm never going to be anything. But when you look at someone who's motivated and someone who just understands the reality, they simply look at it as the next challenge. Because these things are happening, I want to be a person and an agent of change.
That route to change begins where?
Inside. It starts with you.
What advice would you give If you had to give a 3-step advice to somebody that's trying to pull themselves up, so many environmental factors have played on their life. They have found every excuse to not be or to not do, and right in there, smack in the middle of that is procrastination. What 3-step advice would you give that person?
The first step is you have to want the change. Now, you have to want it. No one can want it for you. You have to have a desire. The second step after having the desire is to identify the plan. And that includes each individual step, the long-term goal, and the pathway to get there. And then the third step in that is grace. And I talked about this just recently. You have to give yourself grace because this is a process. This is a journey. And not only that, but you're going to have mishaps. You're going to have mistakes. You're going to fall back into some old behaviors, some old thoughts every now and again. It's just part of the human experience. So give yourself some grace to realize that as you begin this journey of self-discovery and this journey of metamorphosis and transformation, that there's going to be some things that you are going to experience that were unexpected, both from a traumatic point and from a new experience point and a new stimulus point. And there's going to be some things that you're going to have to deal with internally that you weren't prepared for because you've not been in a position to have to be exposed to them yet. So give yourself some grace. And that's the biggest and best part about this journey, about this quest, is because you can realize that, you know what, I might have not done it right today, but I can get it right tomorrow.
Do you feel mentoring and men support groups are important in the personal development of our young men and young women growing up today?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It takes a village, and that cannot be more true and more prevalent than what we're seeing right now, especially with the advent of social media. Your village, your circle, your sphere of influence is really going to determine the trajectory of your life. So you got to surround yourself with like-minded people, and you've got to surround yourself with people who know more than you. You've got to surround yourself with people who are going to hold you accountable. That's a word no one likes. Hold you accountable and tell you when you're messing up, tell you when you're making a mistake, tell you when you're doing things the wrong way, tell you when you're purposely sabotaging yourself. And people who are also going to lift you up and support you and want the best for you. So yes, you've got to find those groups, those individuals. And just like you were saying that when a person takes an interest in a young person responds, the same thing holds true the other way. When a young person comes to someone and expresses an interest in wanting to be better, that person is going to rise to the occasion. That person, like myself, I get excited when a kid says, "Hey, I want to be like you," or "I want to do these things." Great. You know what? Let's start that journey. So don't be afraid. If you're a young person who's going to listen to this, don't be afraid to approach the experienced or the adult or the mature individual and express your interest in wanting to become better, because they're not going to turn you away.
Are the challenges that young people face in the Virgin Islands similar to the same challenges young people over in the States face?
Yes, very similar. You know, we're talking about educational deficiencies. We're talking about high cost of living, which leads to a high rate of poverty, which of course translates to violence, drugs, and other undesirable activities, we'll say. And because of the high cost of living, you often find that parents are working 2 and 3 jobs to try and hold on to what little they have, which leads to a lot of children out here raising themselves with a lack of oversight and a lack of supervision. So all those things are culminating into a very difficult, tumultuous, and unhealthy environment for these children to be growing up in.
So can you tell us what initiatives or projects you got coming up soon?
Man, I'm writing now for one of the newspapers here locally, and they gave me license to have a column for men. So we're going to be talking more about these very subjects in greater detail within the column. I've already had men reach out to ask me to write about certain topics, so that's beautiful. It's already prompting people to come and approach me about different opportunities. My speaking engagements have really increased. I spoke at an award banquet. I spoke at a Upward Bound program where we talk about financial literacy. I've spoken multiple times. I've been in parts of panel discussions about reentry and incarceration. So a lot of things are just really starting to take shape for me. And in terms of things that are coming up right now, just be on the lookout for more episodes from the podcast, Casual Word Radio. And if you're local, just be on the lookout for more opportunities to see me and speaking engagements and other arenas where, again, I'm very approachable and very accessible. So if you're interested, if you want to have a conversation, it's very simple to get in touch with me.
Sure. What are some of the platforms we can find you on?
Absolutely. I am on all social media. Well, not all. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. Facebook is Langley Casual Word Shazor. Instagram is The Casual Word. You can find me, you can contact me on my website, thecasualword.com. We are still developing some of the different parts of that website, but it is up and live. So you can check out some of the things that I have. You can buy my books on there. You can email me at thecasualword@gmail.com. Of course, you can shoot me a message on any of the social media platforms that we've already mentioned, and I will definitely respond. Or if you are in the area and you catch me out, just walk up and let's have a conversation. Again, I'm not averse to that. And if you're interested in support and mentorship, I'm certainly not going to turn you away.
You said the books can be purchased on the casualword.com site?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
You can go there. It'll redirect you to Amazon, but you can look at each book individually and pick which one you want to order.
Some advice there on time management, because you seem to be very good with that. Would you share some advice with us on how to be successful in managing time? Because you seem to be really good at that.
Oh, man. It's a balancing act between family, between rest, between personal interests and hobbies, and then, the things that God has called me to do. So with time management, the best advice I can give is to make sure you're not overextending yourself. Make sure that you're giving yourself time to breathe, time to recharge, and time to reset. And one of the things that I really had to work on was not seeing a gap in my calendar and wanting to fill it with something. Sometimes that downtime is important. Sometimes that quiet time is important. Sometimes just not doing anything is important. So when we talk about time management, really you're talking about creating balance between all the different areas of your life that require your time, and to do so in a way that will make sure that you're not leaving one area underserved to overserve another area. So, for me personally, I have a calendar, and everything goes in the calendar. And my partner and I, we share a calendar, so we know what the kids are doing. I know what she's doing. She knows what I'm doing. My mother and I also have cleaned our calendar, so I know what projects she has coming up, the things that she needs me to do, the things that we do together. And that really helps to get a full understanding of where my obligations lie and when I can take time for myself. So for anybody who's listening, find yourself a tool that can keep you accountable and keep you on track. And find yourself a tool that you can utilize to put your obligations and your interest in, so that you're not overbooking, double booking yourself, and you're able to look at certain things and know when to say no. That is probably the most important lesson that I have learned over the last couple of years, is that sometimes it's okay to be like, look, you know what? I just can't do that. So when we talk about time management and we talk about managing your expectations, we talk about managing your energy. Sometimes no is the appropriate response.
Yes, sir. You know what? I will be the first to admit, and I think there are a lot of other people like that. What would you speak to that? Right?
Stay in the course. When you have a goal and you have a vision and you have a direction, one thing about staying the course is being flexible enough to pivot, because one of the things that we as human beings like to have is control. And so when things aren't going exactly the way we want them to go, we get frustrated, or we want to give up, we want to throw in the towel, not realizing that sometimes the reason why certain things are shifting, the reason why certain doors are closing, is because that's not exactly what you need to be doing. I talk often about making sure that you stay in your lane. Why? Because you are purpose built for the lane, the calling, the walk, the path that you're on. It's only when we get into someone else's path that we start to see that kind of frustration. So when you see something and you're experiencing something that doesn't seem to be in alignment with what you thought you were doing, don't look at the situation, look at your thought, look at your plan, look at what you were envisioning for yourself, and say, maybe this is not the correct step that I need to be taking to reach my goal. And that's a lot of how I work through that. Some people say, plan B is to keep pushing plan A, or there's no such thing as a plan B. And what I think is that you really just have to understand that there's got to be a flexibility and a malleability to you. If you have a direction and you're in alignment, you're going to see that through. That goal is going to happen. Just bear in mind that some other things may come along that will slightly change the way that path looks and feels as you're still traversing.
What we want to do and what God wants us to do. And sometimes I think our ego blurs the line. You know what I mean? But
yep.
I'm really getting a clearer grasp of just how much our faith in our relationship, God plays into what we do.
Man, you are definitely speaking wisdom. One of my friends said something to me once about ego, and he said it's edging God out. And I'll never forget that, because that's exactly what it is, right? Ego is putting yourself first in a very selfish manner. Yes. And idolatry, right, is the worshiping of another god. So when you look at what pride is and ego, it's idolatry of self. And so it is exactly that. You're edging God out, and you're not listening, and you're not being receptive to what his plan is. So you make a great point there. We can be our own stumbling block and get in our own way because we want it the way we want it. And God's saying, listen, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying not yet.
A lesson that can't be learned, but it's a hard lesson for many people. We want it our way. We want to do it our way. When it ain't working out our way, just jump over here and try something else when all along, we didn't tuck God at the center and put the ego and our human desires of what we want to do right there in the middle. And that's a big stumbling block. I learned that the hard way. It
is because sometimes what we don't realize is that momentary no is protection. It's a hesitation, right? It's saying just wait long enough for me to get this obstacle out of the way. Just wait till I can deal with an enemy on the other side. Let me clear the path. And sometimes he's saying, let me set the stage, right? We want to go sit down at the table and the plates haven't been put down yet. You gotta let the table get set before you can sit and dine. So sometimes we gotta just practice being patient, because he's not saying you're not going to have it, you're not going to do it, you're not going to be it. He's just saying, let me put everything in order so that you can.
It's a wonderful journey and a whole lot of learning. I tell you, it's so beautiful when you started out the interview, you said that one key word, introspect. And being able to be honest with ourselves and along our process and our journey. Anything you'd like to share with us?
I just want to extend my gratitude again for coming back on for now a third time. It's always a joy and a privilege to have a conversation with you, and certainly is something that is humbling to be asked to come back as a return guest. So I just want to say that I appreciate you. I appreciate your platform. And I appreciate being able to add some value to it.
I'm looking at a lot that you're doing and you're sharing on Facebook, and it's not just something that I'm looking at; it's something I'm learning from. You know what I mean? So
I appreciate that.
I appreciate having you here, having this dialogue with you each time. So it will not be the last.
I definitely look forward to the next one.
All right, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be safe.
That'll work, sir, and I'll share it out.
All right. Be blessed, man.
All right. You too.
All right, folks. This is Sunrise Conversations Podcast. You heard it there from the man himself, Mr. Langley, casual worshiper, all the way from the Virgin Islands. He's a man on the move. Greater yet, he's a man of truth. Anytime you got somebody in your midst, folks, they want to see you do better in life, and they ain't charging you a penny to help you get to a better quality of life, he's worth listening to, folks. This brother here, a true humanitarian. So again, you can find his work, also his books, on thecasualword.com. You can also find him on Instagram and Facebook at Casual Word. And that's Mr. Langley Shazor of the Virgin Islands by way of Bristol, Virginia. We want to thank y'all for listening in on Sunrise Conversations Podcast with Ken Bonner, your host. Take care.